So, if you've been on the internet over the past week, maybe week and a half, you've probably seen this guy's face. And if you haven't, then maybe you've seen this one. Or maybe you've seen something like this physical manifestation of our disregard for the natural way of things that could only exist on TikTok. And if none of these pictures seem familiar, then let me introduce you to the manga with only 2 chapters that has taken the internet by storm. Welcome to Kagurabachi. So I actually found out about this manga from a YouTuber that I watched named Lotus Asakura. I'll link their channel in the description, but they were actually reacting to the first manga chapter because he wanted to see what the hype was about. So seeing that his reaction actually warranted a video from him, I thought, why not check this out before I watch the video? And let me tell you, what I read actually surprised me. So, with the introduction to chapter 1, we get introduced to the philosophy of being a swordsmith. It takes the action of making weapons, more specifically katanas, and it gives it meaning and morals and depth that you wouldn't think of outwardly when you think of swordsmithing. And it means a lot to the 2 characters that we are very soon introduced to afterwards. Those 2 characters being Kunishige Rokuhira and his son being Shihiro Rokuhira, and those 2 live together in like a little mountain path, and they spend all their days basically being swordsmiths. Kunishige is a lackadaisical airhead, while we have Shihiro, who is more grounded and tries to take care of his father. But that doesn't mean that his father can't take care of himself. He has a reputation, and that reputation is being the most famous and best swordsmith throughout all of Japan. And through this introduction, we get to see scenes like Kunishige bringing home some goldfish and how they're really lucky. And now Shihiro has to be the one to take care of him because his dad's so airheaded that he can't really do it himself. But then we see the contrast of Kunishige being in the forge and just being super stern and super serious, giving Shihiro one-word commands, and Shihiro immediately understands it because he's 15 during the time. So they just grown such a great and special bond that they understand each other off of just their mannerisms and their emotions and how they're acting at that current moment. Then one day we get introduced to a new character who's actually acquainted with Kunishige. That character being Mr. Shiba. And what we learn is that there was a war 15 years ago before Shihiro was born called the Seitei War, where we had Mr. Shiba, who was a fighter, and then we had Kunishige, who was the swordsmith. And once Mr. Shiba decides to leave after their conversation, Kunishige is like, man, he has a point. You're about to be 15. I think it's time that you get acclimated with the swordsman culture, even the dark side of it. So he takes them downstairs to show them the katana that they have, and he tells them about the mindset that he has about it. That katanas are weapons. They aren't good or evil, but the people that use them are the ones that dictate that. So if that person you gave that katana to decides to kill somebody, you're just as complicit as they are. And Shihiro basically has to grapple with that. Even though he's 14, he still has to understand the severity of making weapons. And once he says, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but I'm still set on this path, then his dad's just like, alright, well then you have to live up to that then. Until I believe you, we're gonna have to keep working on that. Then we get a 3-year time skip where we see a bunch of Yakuza members, right? And they're a part of the Korogumi, interrogating one of the resistance members who want that Yakuza group out of their city. And what we learn is the magic system of this world, which is sorcery. And we see that this Yakuza group is backed by one sorcerer who has like a magic that manipulates trees. And this poor resistance member is just being interrogated, and the Yakuza are using his family against him. But then we cut away to Shihiro. And with our reintroduction to Shihiro after the 3-year time skip, we see that he has a scar on his face, and he's meeting up with Shiba on a train station, and we see Shihiro with one of the swords that his father made. And Shiba asks Shihiro why he doesn't get the scar surgically removed, because it is possible in the world. But then Shihiro mentions that the scar is a daily reminder of what happened to him 3 years ago and what happened to his father. So he wakes up with fleshly renewed hatred every morning, which, by the way, crazy edgy, like so unbelievably edgy, I'm choking on it. But if I'm being completely honest, I really do not mind it. It's hilarious, but also cool sometimes. And once they get off the train, we get to see this city in its entirety. How the people are ruled by fear when the Kurogumi are even mentioned, and we see that people that try to resist them are hanged and lynched. And seeing this elicits a reaction from Shihiro where he clutches his katana And this results in just a group of Kurogumi who are talking, just trying like, who's gonna walk up to us and try to kill us? Nobody, right? And I can't show the panel, but if this was YouTube, I would have. It was one of the coldest things I've ever seen from a first chapter. So Shihiro and Shiba take care of those Kurogumi, and then they go to storm the Yakuza base where the movement member was being interrogated. And what ensued I can only describe as a bloodbath, because once Shihiro sees all the gang members in there, there's literally just dismemberment, killing, blood everywhere. It's crazy. And Shiba's on the outside just like, hey, you gotta let him do what you gotta let him do, you know? And so once all the members are taken care of, the sorcerer isn't there. So Shihiro's like, yo, what sorcerer group is connected to you guys? What's going on? Who's the sorcerer? Tell me everything. And the leader is trying to play dumb, but he knows. He completely knows. And so Shihiro sees through this facade and he's like, listen, if you're gonna play dumb, that's fine. I can go interrogate the other guys after I kill you. And so the guy's like, you really want to mess with these guys? They're crazy. Look what they did. And he's like, I have to. And Shihiro, without hesitation, reaffirms his beliefs that his father instilled with him and that he learned after the tragedy. And he tells him, I have to. And that's the end of chapter 1. I was going to cover chapter 2, but I'm going to leave that for you guys to go and read it because I feel like it's definitely worth the read. And also just because I don't want to cover it, but don't worry about that. Now we move on to my thoughts and opinions on this one chapter. So I want to say this immediately. This is not the greatest thing I've ever read, but even if it was one of the greatest things to ever grace fiction, it's not fair to say because this is literally only one chapter, and even though the second one came out, that opinion still holds true. And while I understand that the memes are just jokes, I'm not saying that. It's just more that the people that are hating on it, I feel like haven't really given it a fair chance because this is only one chapter. And granted, I'm not going to tell you to read something that you don't like. Don't jump the gun so quickly. Let this thing have its time to shine. Me and some of my friends were talking about it, and some of them mentioned that this attention also has a negative side to it, and that if this thing, for the start of it, may be mid or something, as to how someone would describe it, then that's definitely going to flatline the attention that it got, and it may kill it before it's even able to flourish. And I can understand that perspective. I'm more happy that I got attention because it means that because more people can give it attention, and then that can bring more of a demand for it, and that manga can skyrocket to one of the bigger ones and people can start reading. But I understand both perspectives. This isn't natural growth, and that can hinder it in the long run when it needs to come down to natural fans that were there from the beginning. But overall, this manga impressed me enough for me to want to stick with it and keep reading because I enjoyed what I read, even if it was typical shonen stuff. I thought the setting was pretty interesting. It was modern day Japan, which usually wouldn't happen when you're dealing with swordsmiths, so I thought that was pretty cool. It also had its own history with the Seitei War, which I don't know anything about, so I think that's pretty cool. It has me interested in that. There's also the art and the paneling. I think that this manga's art is fire, and I know that it's only going to get better the more that I see it, and with chapter 2 that was only solidified. I also like the cast of characters that were introduced in this first chapter, like Kunishige or Shihiro or even Shiba. The other fodder characters I don't care about, but I know that later on I feel like I'm going to get more attached to these characters, maybe some that I get introduced later on. I also wanted to say that I like the profound perspectives that this manga had on life and swordsmithing, and that it could really be applied to anything. I really appreciated it because it did have some depth, some substance to what was being said, so I really appreciated that. It's not like anything that I haven't heard before, but still, it was nice and it was stable. But overall, my high opinion of this chapter is riding off the fact that there's a lot of potential for this manga. And I hope that as the chapters go on, since this does release weekly, that it'll live up to that potential. And granted, expectations can lead to failure. I still hope that what delivers is good enough to satiate that potential that I want to see reached. But overall, I have high hopes, and I hope to see that chapter 3, because again, chapter 2 came out when I'm doing this, delivers on what I hope. But that's going to be it for me for now. Let me know down below how you felt about the first chapter. Keep it spoiler free because at the end of the day, there's still people who haven't read it or who may want to read it. I may cover Kagurabachi again, maybe like a new chapter if it surprises me or anything. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. I hope you have a great rest of your day and I hope you enjoyed. Peace.